Come on and shine, shine, shine. Las Vegas, shine your light on me.
Welcome to Las Vegas Tonight with your award-winning host, Dale Davidson. Dale interviews fascinating guests from top-ranked celebrities to people just like you who have an important story to tell. For more than 15 years, Dale has broadcast every week from the fabulous Las Vegas Strip. He finds the people who really make Las Vegas a one-of-a-kind city and lets the world know just what's happening in this remarkable town. You'll discover why 50 million people visit the entertainment capital of the world every year. Stay tuned for another exciting episode of Las Vegas Tonight.
Welcome to Las Vegas Tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in, and believe me, you're going to be glad you did. Jeneen Miller is making a return visit. We decided sitting before and talking before we rolled tape that it was 8 years ago you were on the program.
It's been a while.
And it was so touching at the time and emotional, and I'm sure we might have much of the same here. But you're so successful, you've done so well. You have a best-selling book called Pieces of Victory. You're interviewing people on your own show. I'm very proud of you.
Oh, thank you, Dale. Thank
really
you so
am.
much for having me back again. I
bet.
so much appreciate this.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on. Let's go and talk a little bit about your backstory, because that's all about what the book's about. Where'd you grow up? It was in the L.A. area, wasn't it?
It was in the L.A. area.
Yeah.
So I was born in Hollywood, California.
Yeah, we're familiar.
And then eventually we moved to Newbury Park.
Oh, okay.
Towards Ventura County.
Yeah, nice area,
Nice neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good place to grow up. And not a happy childhood, though. A very unhappy home life.
Unhappy home life.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tell us about that a little.
When I was a kid, there was domestic violence in my home.
Right.
And then we got counseling. And when we got counseling, it was put on me that I was the problem of the family. And then the therapist had said, no, Jeneen is not part of the problem, and discovered the domestic violence that was going on. And then my father stopped hitting my mom and stopped hitting the kids. So I remember my mother and my brother being hit, but I just don't remember me being hit.
Yeah.
Verbal abuse, I remember all of it.
Yeah. And then that led to some really tragic incidences. Tell us a little bit about that car ride. That's what I remember from what you told me the last time around. When
I had confided in my parents about sexual abuse that was happening in our family, they didn't believe me. It was either they didn't believe me or it was my fault. They were going back and forth with it.
Right.
I was upset with it. My brother and I were in an argument in the car on Potrero Road, which is a windy, twisted road. And my mother had stopped the her in the middle of the road, and she could have been hit, and I was yelling for her to get it back in, put her safety belt on and drive. But she wanted to go in the back to yell at us, and I was yelling and screaming. I thought we were going to get hit, and she said, you must not have faith in God. You must not have faith in God, because I kept saying, we're going to get hit, and she kept saying, I don't have faith. And finally she got in the car, put her belt on, and when we got home, she was angry at me for yelling at her, and then got holy oil and started coming towards me with it. And I was blocking her from doing it because she kept saying that Satan was inside of me. Satan, I need to, like, she wanted to shake me to get Satan out.
Yes.
And I was blocking her because I was
yeah.
blocking her. She told my father that I was violent with her. And so he didn't want to hear my side of the spectrum on that, and I was punished for that. But that's just one example of the spiritual abuse and emotional abuse that I had with my family. I don't believe that my parents thought I was going to be abused in this lockdown residential program that they sent me to.
Yeah.
But they wanted me to be in a strict environment, and I was already excelling as a child. I was on honor roll mention, I studied, I sacrificed not watching television to study until 11 o'clock at night.
Right.
I worked, I bought my own prom dress. I wasn't partying every night, and if they thought I was on drugs, a simple drug test would have sufficed.
Yes. Tell us about the day they locked you up.
They had told me that I was going to see a therapist, and I was happy about that and relieved that we were going to have a third party help our family heal, and that I was going to heal from sexual abuse that happened in my family. And I felt supported, and I thought we were on the right track. And what happened was I was behind a 12-foot fence with barbed wire, and it was too late. And I really was optimistic at that point, thinking, okay, there's a 12-foot fence and barbed wire, but this is where they said the therapist is, so I guess this is where the therapist is. And before I knew it, a preacher was telling me that I was a problem in the family and that I've caused my parents enough trouble, and I was to be there for a year.
Wow.
And
that's the first you heard of it.
That's the first I heard of it.
And your parents had left and just left you there at that point.
I said, how could you do this to me? How could you do this to me? Several times, and I didn't shed a tear. I didn't want to give them that satisfaction. And they said, they didn't say anything. They just stood frozen. And then I was escorted over to the showers to be deloused.
Wow. The people who ran it, purported to be Christians, obviously weren't based on their behavior.
Exactly.
Tell us about them and tell us what you found out about them.
I was a Christian before going into this place, and I had an abusive household.
Sure.
And Christianity was my safe haven. The Christian church that I attended, I was heavily involved with youth group and church, and I volunteered my time. I had asked and begged my parents to send me to a private Christian school so I can get that one-on-one attention and have a better environment.
Right.
It was like that. I was praying with other students and hugging them, and I wasn't afraid to call myself a Christian. I was not afraid to call myself a Christian and just spread the joy that I had about being a Christian. It was just an escape for me.
Yes.
So I just want you to keep that in mind before we go into this dark place.
Yes.
So here I am in this so-called concentration camp, and in my opinion, it was like a concentration camp.
Yeah.
I had no rights, no human rights, no communication, no phones, no letters to the outside world except my parents, and then that was monitored, and they made us write. It was mandatory that we write our parents twice a week, so it wasn't even an option.
Yeah.
It started with being deloused in the shower. They checked my bags. I couldn't wear what I wanted to wear. I couldn't think how I wanted to think. We were on dorm silence most of the time. I couldn't speak to any of the girls. I had a buddy. I had to follow a buddy 3 feet behind. It was very degrading. I witnessed a girl being duct taped to a chair, and it was all orchestrated by staff that was running the place. And they were teaching us how to bully. So the staff would orchestrate that we abuse other children. So we were abusing other children in this place.
And they did this because why? For control?
For control, and I think it was part of the hierarchy. It was part of the structure.
Right.
So the more you abused other children, the higher you climbed up the hierarchy ladder. And unfortunately, this is not an isolated incident. This is happening across our nation, and I'll get into that later, but over 100,000 of these types of places exist.
Yes, you've told me that. That's just incredible.
It's awful.
100,000 of these places.
100,000 plus in the U.S. alone. In the U.S. alone, that's not including international.
Wow. And as the months went by, did it just get worse? Did you become accustomed to this life?
I started getting brainwashed. At first, you are thinking these people are crazy. How is everybody beating to the same drum? You would think another staff would think that something was wrong and to protect the children. And there were about 10 staff. They were all beating to the same drum.
Yes.
Girl handcuffed, duct tape on her mouth, handcuffed behind her back, duct tape to the chair, while other children were saying something derogatory about her in the name of God. Bibles were open. And that was just one example. When you threatened a child that if they were to vomit, that you would have to eat your own vomit.
Yeah.
It's a concentration. This is a concentration camp. I was threatened to eat my own vomit. I was praying to God every day, please don't let me vomit. Please don't let me vomit, because I knew what would happen.
Wow.
I have witnessed it. I've witnessed a girl being forced fed to, she wasn't eating her food. She was nervous because it was her first day at the camp. And what they did was they blended the food and then poured it down a funnel and force fed her. And she said, I'm going to throw up. And they said, if you throw up, we're going to make you eat your own vomit in front of everybody. It was almost like they were conditioning us that if you behave or if you don't listen to everything that we tell you to do, these are the consequences.
Right.
This is what's going to happen to you.
Wow. And beatings took place?
Beatings did not take place, or at least I didn't see beatings that took place. Other sister programs, yes, the
I've heard
beatings
about that in
have
other
taken
places.
place.
Yeah.
I have witnessed girls being handcuffed in chapel because they tried to commit suicide and it was too tight and they were screaming, and the preacher did nothing. He was just basically making it worse.
Right.
By beating her down on an emotional and spiritual level in chapel while she was crying that the handcuffs were too tight on her.
Oh, my Lord.
Dog leashes. If you didn't follow, you had to follow your buddy 3 feet behind, and if you didn't, the preacher said that he would put a dog leash on the buddy. And the buddy is the child. So we had children running, the children were running the schools. The children were running the schools.
And you were a teenager at the time.
I was 16 years old. And my buddy was 12 years old,
right,
by the way.
and running your everyday life.
I had an invisible dog leash 3 feet behind, and if you didn't stand 3 feet behind, he would put a dog leash
Oh, my God.
on. He had a rope tied. I actually saw a rope tied from the buddy to the other student. I saw it. Yep.
That's
And then
incredible.
isolation for days, weeks, and months at a time.
So they were sent out of the dorm, right, where you were commanded to be quiet and all the rest of it. And if anybody acted out, or they just felt like punishing somebody, they would put them in an isolation room.
Right. You could forget your pencil, and there you are in isolation. Jody Hobbs, who is Survivors of Institutional Abuse.
I remember Jody, yeah.
We'll get into that a little bit later, but she was locked in there for 2 weeks for forgetting a pencil. And the isolation room, they don't give you books to read. You don't have anything to keep your mind occupied. You're listening to preaching tapes, and the preaching tapes are abusive. You're a Jezebel, you're a whore. You're listening to this all day long for weeks and months at a time. You're a thief, you're a liar, you're a whore. It's all programming. And that was part of his preaching.
That is
And
unbelievable.
indoctrination.
That's complete nonsense. Did you totally lose hope? Did
I
you think you'd ever get out of there?
I held on to hope, and that's what my book is about. My book is about dark and light, and half of my book is dark, bringing awareness about child abuse in the home and child abuse in these residential programs.
Yes.
And the other part is the light, which is the love story. And I
Yes.
hold on to the love story and reflect back on what my life was like before going into this lockdown.
Yes.
And then I tell the story, and then it comes full circle, and then I'm back into the reform school. But it's that hope that kept me grounded, that kept me wanting to live, because there were several times where I wanted to die.
Yeah.
I wanted to die
I'll bet
in
you
this
did.
place. And I did try to kill myself. I actually had a sheet over my head when my mother said, We weren't allowed to talk about boys. We weren't. I could never say my boyfriend's name, ever, or talk about the outside world, or talk about a friend, a Christian friend, a Christian boyfriend. This was another world.
I know it was. We need to take a brief break. We'll be back with Jeneen Miller, and we'll get to the happy part too, right after this. Hi, I'm Dale Davidson, host of Las Vegas Tonight. You know, radio has an enduring place in the heart of America. Sometimes it's music that can enliven your spirit or keep you company when you need some. More often for me, it's just been the right spoken word or two that can quiet my mind and soul. Radio brings me a reassuring word in the quiet of night or a welcoming voice early in the morning as I shake off the night's sleep and find my way into God's purpose for my day. And always, I find the best radio station is the one that brings me the best news, the gospel of Jesus Christ. My favorite radio station is KKVV in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's still right where it's been for years, at 1060 on the AM dial, hovering over Sin City like a gospel airship, broadcasting the good news of the abounding love that Jesus Christ has for every single one of us. No matter who you are or where you live, you can receive God's Word via the KKVV Gospel Airship. Just go to kkvv.com and click on Listen Live. KKVV is using all the tools that God's provided them, like podcasting and video streaming and video on demand, to produce programs that lift up our fellow believers and save the lost. If you feel a calling to speak to others about Jesus Christ on your very own show, pick up the phone and call the station. They'll be happy to tell you how. Call KKVV today at 702-731-5588 or drop them an email at kkvvradio@hotmail.com. Please join me in becoming part of the KKVV family. You'll be glad you did. Welcome back to Las Vegas Tonight. Jeneen Miller is my very special guest. It's so nice to see her again. 8 years ago, we first revealed what was going on in these reform schools, they call them, but concentration camps is what you described them as. It's just a horrible, horrible situation. You mentioned 100,000 of these, which is a shock to me. 100,000 of these schools across the country. Tell me about that.
It is very shocking. It is shocking to most Americans that don't understand that this is going on in our country, and it needs to be stopped. Awareness is key. 100,000 plus of conversion therapies, rehabilitation programs, wilderness camps for kids, and reform schools, boot camps for kids, and the list goes on. You get the idea.
Right,
They're abusing our children.
Yes.
And it's $1 billion industry.
Where does the money come from? The parents paying to lock up their kids?
The parents. Parents, and these are, most of them are nonprofit organizations.
Right.
And it's disgusting.
Yeah.
Nonprofit organizations, not all, but most, and then the parents are feeding. We need to educate the parents because unfortunately, and we'll get into this a little bit later, legislation is not enough.
Right.
We need...
Has to be enforced.
We need it enforced. We need legislation to be passed.
Yes.
And we can go over that.
Now the parents, and we'll give your parents the benefit of this doubt, I guess. They didn't know how bad it was, right?
No, I'll give them that.
Yeah.
I really don't believe that my parents knew this place was going to be abusive. Strict, yes. Wanting their child to be perfect, sugar and sweet and everything nice, yes. I think they wanted a Stepford child. Right. A Stepford Christian child. But I think that's what they wanted. They wanted someone on their side.
Yes, and for these guys who the leaders and the owners and the operators who call themselves Christians, I hate to even give them that title. They're totally screwed up, and they have a complete misunderstanding of what the Lord has told us.
I agree.
You know, it's
I agree.
just
they're taking
horrible.
The Bible and twisting it.
Yeah.
I call it the twisted scriptures. And like I said before, Christian coming into this place, I knew the difference. I know that this was not Christian.
You had a good experience.
This is satanic. To me, as far as I'm concerned, this is satanic, and this is what's going on. And that's why it is so important. I believe in freedom of religion. This is very important. Freedom of religion, yes. But when it comes to abusing our children, anybody could say they're a Christian. Anybody could say they're a Christian, and they could be pedophiles and abuse our children.
Yeah, and what do you think parents should do to check this out? Because I'm sure there are good ones. I know of some wilderness programs that are good, but how do they know which one is a bad apple?
They don't. Yeah. And like I say on my show, Pieces of Victory, if you have a 1% chance that this could happen to your child, why would you even take that risk?
Yeah.
And what I suggest, and this just because I'm a survivor, okay, 8 hours, and then the child comes home. They're able to tell you what's going on in this program.
Right.
There's so much brainwashing that goes on, and the way that these places are structured, it's unbelievable. They can't tell you what's going on while they're locked up in this program.
Sure.
And sometimes it even takes months, maybe years, until they finally come out, because they've been brainwashed so much that this program is working for them, and it saved them.
Yes, yes. Yeah, brainwashing is a very strange thing, and you put the tinge of religion in it, which is what they often do. Tell us about some of the other camps that you know about. I know that you've helped other survivors who have not adapted anywhere near as well as you have. Tell us about that.
Let's talk about conversion therapies. And James Swift is a very, very good friend of mine, and he was abused in a conversion therapy. He has a book called Rusted Rhinestones. Yeah. Rusted Rhinestones is his book, and that made me cry. It was just horrific knowing what is going on under our noses in this country. What happens with conversion therapies, it's when parents can't accept their child for being gay and they want to pray the gay away. It's awful. What is happening is they're torturing our children. I mean, this is child torture. He was taken in the middle of the night. They put a hoodie on him. He couldn't see where he was going, had no idea. They threw him in a cage. He was fed dog food as a privilege. He was tied inside the cage, naked, and it was a pedophile's playground. This preacher told the parents that he's an abomination to God, which, I'm sorry, eating shrimp is an abomination, but you don't see people being locked up in cages for eating shrimp. Okay, so you can't pick and choose who you want to hate, okay? And Jesus would be torn apart if he knew that this was going on. I'm sorry, but this is not a God or Jesus.
Right.
And
Agreed.
This is not for us. We're not supposed to judge at all. But needless to say, I'm going on a different tangent. He was tortured almost to death. I'm talking shock treatment. And they were running politicians and football players through this camp. He could hear the preacher making the calls. So not only did the parents pay $10,000 to send their child to this camp because they wanted to pray the gay away, now he's making money off of sex trafficking in this camp, and James is being tortured almost to death. He's lucky he's alive.
Wow. Wow.
And when we were filming, by the way, we were on Netflix, season 2, Haunted, third one down, called Cult of Torture. Watch Cult of Torture. It is true. It is unfortunately true, and they left out the football players and the politicians going through this. But kudos to Netflix.
Who were abusing these kids sexually.
Yes. Sodomizing them. Yes. It's
My
awful.
Lord. My
Awful.
Lord.
The nightmares. And after we were filming,
Yeah.
I was depressed for 3 days. I didn't
bet
want to
you
get
were.
out of bed. It just put me in check on what kind of place we're in. It's dark. It can be dark, but there is also light, and I know that. But it was just so dark, and I was depressed, and I want changes. I want to make changes.
How's
and
James
expose-
now?
He's good. He has his ups and downs. When we were filming, he was shaking. I literally had to hold his hands
Yeah.
to stop him from trembling.
I remember him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Such a beautiful show. He is such a beautiful soul and
Yeah.
a gem. He is helping kids that are homeless on the street because they were thrown out for being gay, and he's helping those kids, and he wants to build a homeless shelter for them.
Severe or out of control legalism is what causes this. And it's the same sort of thing that the Westboro Baptist people would do and give all Christians a bad name. Jesus commands that we love one another. The Lord wants us to love one another. We are all different, and Jesus loves gay people as much as straight people.
Thank you.
And what we need to do is to pray for them and the people in their lives to make certain that they are not abused. There's no excuse for this, you know.
And I
It's criminal, and they should be in prison, the people who've done
I
this.
agree. And
Yeah.
which brings me to this segue. New Bethany, homes for boys and homes for girls. They were sodomizing the girls, and I was Jennifer Halter's rape advocate. And by the way, thank you so much for helping us. Dale helped us fly to Louisiana so we could make a report on New Bethany. But regardless of all the reports that were made, this preacher was never prosecuted. Never prosecuted.
They shut the place down,
They shut the place down.
but they never prosecuted him for all the
No,
crimes
not the
he
staff
committed.
that was part of it. No
Yeah.
one was ever
Yeah.
prosecuted.
You saw him though, didn't you, when you were down there? Didn't I hear a story that you?
They did. They went and took a trip to the school,
That's right.
and they did see him, and they have photographed him in the newspaper.
Yeah.
So there's been numerous media attention, numerous articles, numerous reports, and yet these people are not prosecuted. They're just-
Why do you think? Is there a dark undercurrent here, or is there a cover up by fellow pedophiles? What's going on?
If you want my opinion,
I do.
it's a billion-dollar industry. Connect the dots.
Wow. There's money to be made
Money
here.
to be made. Whenever
Yeah.
there's money, how many times do we hear about parents that you can't beat your child in your home? Social services will be there.
Right.
You can't do these things in your home,
Right.
but yet you can pay to have your child tortured, and when
Nothing
there's money
happens.
and nothing happens.
That is tragic.
And I don't want to say, most of these parents don't know their child is being abused.
Yes. Yes.
They see the end result and they're happy with it, but they
Yes.
don't understand that to get to the end result, they're being tortured. The children are being tortured.
Yeah, and you know what? It's all races, all socioeconomic levels, all different kinds of people. Michael Reagan came out and talked about how he was abused in one of these schools, and his parents didn't know about it.
Paris Hilton.
Paris Hilton.
Paris
Sure,
Hilton.
yeah, she
Oh.
recently came out and described what happened to her, and she's been involved in this legislation, right?
Yes.
Yeah, tell me about that.
SB 127. She was there for the signing of that legislation, and that is in Utah.
Any other legislation that you can tell us about?
Yes, good
That's
question.
hopeful. Yeah.
There is a federal bill that's out now. It's CASA, Keeping All Students Safe Act.
Okay.
All Students Safe Act. But the problem with this is that it's for public schools, not for private, not for residential. And so it's a great stepping stone, but we need to rewrite it. We need to incorporate. Yes, it needs to be expanded. We need to protect residential programs.
What does the law say, or what does it do? It shuts down schools that act this way, or
it helps.
Sends people to prison, hopefully.
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah.
It provides a safe haven for children, so they're protected more. A lot of these kids are being restrained and inappropriately restrained, tortured while they're being restrained. They're not fed properly, so malnourished, child endangerment, and the list goes on. And this is a way of protecting. Corporal punishment. You'd be surprised at what goes on behind closed doors in these places, whether they are licensed, unlicensed, religious, non-religion.
Yeah, so we need people to appeal to their senators and congressmen. Get a federal bill that covers not only public school, but private academies, camps, wilderness programs, everything that is boot camps, all the rest of that nonsense.
We need to detail it. We need to fine tune it. And which brings me to, let's talk about HB 605. HB 605 is for the LGBTQ, banning the LGBTQ conversion therapies. There's an exemption. Take a wild guess at what that exemption is.
I don't know.
It's religion. So religion is actually building these conversion therapies, and now they're an exemption.
Using that as a cover.
So we need to fine tune that one.
I want to talk more about that. We need to take a brief break.
Okay.
And Jeneen Miller will be back with us. We're going to cover the rest of that particular bill, and then talk some good news about your book and how well you're doing, which is wonderful. We'll be back with Jeneen Miller right after this. And welcome back to Las Vegas Tonight. I'm your host, Dale Davidson. Jeneen Miller is with us, author of this terrific book called Pieces of Victory. And you can get this book by doing?
You can visit my website, which is piecesofvictory.com. Again, piecesofvictory.com, and I will sign it personally for you.
And you voiced over the
audiobook. Yes, I have an audiobook that I launched just recently, and I am doing the narration for that.
And you liked it mostly?
Yes.
Yeah, even though you were reliving some grim stuff, but there's a love story too.
It was cathartic for me to do it. But I did get in tune with the love story, and
we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yes.
Before we went to break, we talked about the LGBTQ bill.
Yes.
And the exemption for religion. Tell us more about that.
Yes, James Swift is heavily involved in HB 605. With that legislation, with that bill, and it is to provide oversight. It's for banning LGBT conversion therapies.
Right.
And there is an exemption to that bill, and the exemption is, take a wild guess what that is.
Yeah, religion.
Religion.
Yeah. So under cover of religion, it continues. even though there's a bill that's trying to ban it.
It's a stepping stone,
yeah.
but it's not good enough because
Yeah.
religion is what is creating the conversion therapies, and now they're exempt. So it almost means nothing, but it's something because it's in the public eye.
Yeah.
It needs to be rewritten. It needs to be fine-tuned.
Yeah, and once again, it's misusing religion, misusing the Word of God. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that people can't change. People can change. And I've had guests on my show who have talked about coming out of the gay lifestyle. But it's one thing to voluntarily do that because of an experience that you had, but it's something else to torture kids over it.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's
It's
not
awful.
what God has in mind at all.
No, it's
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah.
And
So 605 you think is a good start.
it's a good start.
Yeah.
It needs to be rewritten.
Yeah, I understand.
Yes.
Any other bills that we should know about?
There was a bill in 2010 to stop child abuse teen acts,
Right.
and it was introduced by George Miller, and then it was reintroduced by Adam Schiff, but
I remember when
it's
that
dead in the
happened.
water. But I
Yeah.
wanted to tell the audience that we have been working on this for years,
I know
and now
you
that's
have.
dead in the water.
Yeah.
I'm happy to see that we are progressing, but this is an emergency. This is happening in our country, and I truly believe that a lot of Christians don't know that there are exemptions, and there should be no exemptions
Right.
on child abuse. I cannot emphasize that enough.
Well, there's no excuse.
There's no
ever,
excuse.
for that sort of thing.
And like I said, it's a perfect way for a pedophile to just get in there and get away with everything, including murder.
Wow. Tell me a little bit about the Survivors of Institutional Abuse Network.
Sure.
And we should have Jody on again.
I know, we should have Jody on.
But she's a real pioneer in this too. And you knew her but didn't know her. I
Yes.
guess in the same facility, right?
Right. When you're locked up in these camps, the children are separated from each other. They can't speak to each other. I saw her, but I wasn't able to speak with her.
Yeah.
And we connected years later, and she had put together Survivors of Institutional Abuse.
Right.
And honestly, I thought my place was an isolated incident. I really thought that this was a fluke. I was going to make a report. I was going to be done with it, and then that was it. And it's
And
unfortunately,
then it all started to come out.
it all started
Everywhere, all over the country.
everywhere. Kidnapped for Christ is one of them. David Warnsman is a survivor. He was put into a camp for being gay, and they tortured him.
Oh my Lord.
And they were going to lock him in until he was 21, which is quite frankly unconstitutional.
Right.
It was in a Dominican Republic, and he was going to be locked up until he was 21, but someone came and rescued him. And
Wow.
you should find out about that story.
Sounds
Just
like
look
a
up
movie,
Kidnapped for
yeah.
Christ. In fact, they did do a documentary on
Oh,
it.
did they?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's remarkable.
It was a journalist that stumbled onto this place.
Yeah.
And she thought, oh, how cool, this is Christian. How cool that these Christians are rehabilitating these kids. And then when she went in to tell her story, had the camera rolling, found out they were being abused and had it on
Lord.
film.
Wow. Let's talk about hope for a minute and the love story, if you will.
Sure.
You have managed to remain very upbeat and not depressive, which I think I would have. You are a great advocate for others. Tell me about hope. Tell me what hope you think we have in this area.
Sure.
These poor kids.
I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I do have my ups and downs. I am human, just like everyone else, but I try to be more productive, and I try to help as much as I possibly can that does get my mind off of going into depression.
Sure.
It's just different ways that I handle it with exercise and keeping busy, but hope is what got me through. The love story is what got me through the darkest times of my life, and just holding on to that, to know that someone loved me, truly loved me, and I just held on to that.
Yeah, tell me more about that.
When I was 16 years old, I fell in love. In fact, he was my boyfriend when I was 13 years old. So he
Wow.
was my first holding hands, first kiss. it was wonderful. We were chaperoned when we were kids to the movies, and my parents knew his parents, and he was not a bad kid. They loved him and loved his parents. And at 16 years old, we fell in love.
Oh,
and
that's
I
sweet.
truly felt like I was loved, and vice versa.
That's nice. That's nice. And he came back into your life when?
Later on in life, is
Yeah.
that what you're referring to?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, we are friends.
Yeah,
We are really
to
good
this day,
friends. Yes,
yeah.
to this day.
Yeah. Love makes a big
In
difference.
fact, he's reading my book on his cruise,
Is that right?
and I gave him the audiobook as well. So
Oh, that's
his
sweet.
mother read the book.
That's sweet.
Yeah, it's very sweet.
That's sweet. You know, love means everything, doesn't it? And to know that you're loved and that you're cared for, and no matter what you go through, you know somebody cares. And of course, in our case as Christians, that's God, you know, that's Jesus who loves us that way. And if we can look to him as our eternal lover, boy, isn't that swell? Isn't that a great thing? You have overall hope that we're making progress, or do you think this is really as bad as it was when you were 16?
I'm an optimistic person, so I'm going to gear for everything is leading to the greater good. Everything is leading to change.
Yeah.
And we are making a difference, even if there is an exemption. Look, I'm on this show right now, and I'm talking to Christians, and a lot of Christians probably don't know about these exemptions.
They don't.
Knowledge
Yeah.
is everything.
I guarantee they
Awareness
don't.
is everything.
Yeah.
And to have that, this is a door to more change. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'm very hopeful.
Well, I'm hopeful that the show helps.
I believe it will.
Yeah, yeah. I think the series that we did 8 years ago helped some. You know, we had a series of interviews with survivors who all had harrowing stories, and pretty much were all Christian anyway, which is amazing to me, and I'm so happy about that part. Jeneen, I mentioned during the last break that I was going to call on you. So if you don't mind doing this, that's your camera right here. If you want to address that, particularly talk to the kids, if you will, about Jesus and how he can help them get through these kinds of things. Kids who may be in their homes and being abused, or they might be in one of these institutions and are abused. But whatever the Lord puts on your heart.
I don't, in my personal experience, I don't blame God for the experiences that I've been through. I believe that I chose this path. I chose this mission to help children. And the message that I have for children is that when bad things happen, it's not God's fault. We have choices and we have free will. And I always held on to that free will. I have free will. Everyone has free will. It's not God's fault. We came here for experiences and learning and helping each other. And if we could just see it that way, it might be bad right in the moment, but when you get out of it and you're free, you're going to reflect back and realize that it was part of something that you had chosen to grow, and you're going to help other people and save other lives. And your experiences is the passion that you will have to do it.
Yes, thank you so much. I think that helped a lot of people just now, particularly kids. And I would recommend that they pray, you know, that they talk to Jesus. The Bible states that we pray continually, and I don't believe that means get down on your knees 17 times a day. It means talk to him.
Right.
He's your friend, and he's been standing by you even during the worst times. And that's always a hard thing for people to understand. Why do bad things happen to good people? Well, we don't know the answer to that. I certainly don't. And whenever I'm asked that, I say, I don't know, but Jesus will walk you through this. He'll be with you when you're suffering. And it breaks my heart that there are children anywhere suffering. And I thank you for being their advocate.
Oh, thank you. I also believe that the children should pull from, I believe that there's angels walking this earth, and as dark as it may be, I don't want to say seem, it is dark here, right. But there's also light, and there are also angels walking this place.
Sure.
And to reach out to them for help, and don't be afraid to reach out to the right people.
That's right. Yeah. If you see something or experience something, say something. Right. You know, that's something that kids all need to know. And thank you for reminding us of it. Once again, I'm sorry to say an hour is raced by. Pieces of Victory is the name of the book. And also on YouTube, Pieces of Victory,
yes.
Right? And you can watch her show where she interviews other survivors and advocates for them and cheerleads for them, which is wonderful. Your website again, give me the name.
Sure, it's piecesofvictory.com. Again,
easy.
piecesofvictory.com.
Okay.
And then we have helpforteens.org. Helpforteens.org is James Swift. So if parents are questioning sending their kids to conversion therapies, they can talk to him and or watch his show on Netflix. So.
Can they reach you via your website or?
Yes.
Okay, because you gotta have a link there.
I have a link there.
And you'll welcome people asking for help.
Exactly.
Which is what they're gonna do. Jeneen, God bless you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate
Come
it.
back.
I will.
We want you to.
Can you imagine what will happen in 5 years?
That's right. In no time at all. I'm so glad to see you doing so well.
Oh, thank
Jeneen
you.
Miller, a shining light in our lives. Thank you so much for watching. And as I try to recall and say each and every episode, when it comes to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, please walk with him. God bless you.
Mama said they're not the kind a young girl should be hanging around. Don't throw your life away on those fools and their foolish games. Baby had her own mind, just couldn't see the hands of time or the hand that fate would deal to a little girl in a world that's real. Baby said I won't let go, and I won't give them up. I won't stop till I've had enough. This is my life, my chance to fly. Was a mama now. She saw her child with that same crowd. As mama left the world behind, her words echoed in baby's mind. Keep your head up high, keep on looking to a brighter sky. Mama said, don't let go and don't give up. Don't stop till you've done it right. This is your life, your chance to fly. Mama said, don't let go and don't give up. Don't stop till you've done it right. This is your life, your chance to fly.
Our world isn't perfect. Just watch the news. Evil is everywhere. Now, at the core of who we are, we all know and feel these things to be wrong. But why? Why do we agree that some actions are wrong? Where did we get our standard, the moral code that tells us good from bad? If we're creating it ourselves, free to choose what works for us, then that would make every action acceptable. Good and bad would be the same. Then people who commit heinous crimes wouldn't be guilty. They'd simply be doing what's right for them. And yet we say they're guilty. When someone murders an innocent person, it bothers us, enrages us. We hate injustice. Now, maybe we're in a game of survival of the fittest. Suffering and death simply weed out those who aren't strong enough or lucky enough to have won the genetic lottery. But if that's true, why do stories of death and destruction draw up feelings of deep disgust and hurt inside you? Why does your heart break at the news of tragedy? And why do so many other people feel the same way? Could it be that there's something more? Some greater outside force that has ingrained you with the desire for love and goodness? Suppose there's a reason behind hating the evil in the world. Suppose it leads to something greater. Could it lead to hope?
Across the ages, humanity is often gathered in prayer, especially in times of crisis and need. It's a natural response, but who are we speaking to? Is prayer merely a platitude or emotional cliche? Yahoo! Or is there a God on the other end of the line? And if so, can we speak to him? And what is he saying? What exactly is prayer? Theologian John Piper describes prayer as intentionally conveying a message to God. He also outlines 3 main approaches to prayer, which each depend on how you view God. If your perspective is that God is in everything and everything is God, including you, me, the sunrise, the humpback whale, the smoke lightly wafting from a sun. Well, you get the picture. Prayer from this perspective is all about connecting with the divinity within us and around us. The only problem is that if we are part of God, prayer can feel like a one-sided conversation. If you feel like God exists, but he's distant and unapproachable, then prayer can become about developing special techniques or higher levels of devotion and holiness in order for our words to reach God's ears. Hello? Or we just give up trying. However, when you read the Christian Bible, God shows himself not to be distant or silent, but to be personable, accessible, and a creator who speaks. In the creation story, we see him literally speak each created thing into existence, as if to open an external conversation with his creation. Howdy. And throughout the Bible, he consistently speaks to humanity. So if God speaks, how do we speak to him? A big part of God's conversation with humanity was the person of Jesus, who God sent to earth as the human manifestation of himself. Thank you very much. So that he could talk to us directly. The Bible literally refers to Jesus as the Word, God's Word. And he gave a direct answer when his friends asked him about how to speak to God. Jesus says prayer is simply and honestly talking to God. If something is on your mind, if there's a situation where you don't know what to do, you can talk to God about it. You don't have to pray in a church, and you don't have to sound religious. God loves you and wants you to be real with him. You can pray out loud. You can pray silently. He listens wherever and whenever. So how do we hear God? God's voice is described in the Bible as a still, small voice. Many people hear back from God by quieting the noise around them and pausing to listen. Or by reading the Bible, which God also calls his Word. The more you talk with someone, the more you get to know who they are. The God who speaks has started the conversation. If you haven't spoken in a while, why don't you try to pick it up again? It could change your life.
I have times in my life where I feel like all my strength is drained from me, and in its place comes a feeling of emptiness. Seems I have everything, an awesome job, wife, money, but there's still something missing. In those moments, I find a place where I can be alone, I calm down, and I pray. I close my eyes and softly whisper the words of prayer, filled with an unparalleled feeling of peace and stillness. Next comes inspiration, a desire to love, forgive, and to do all the things that I had no strength to do before. Jesus fills the emptiness inside of me, and I feel myself truly happy.
Morning shine, shine, shine. Las Vegas, shine your light on me.
You've been watching Las Vegas Tonight with your host, Dale Davidson. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of our show. We so appreciate your loyalty to our program. To keep Las Vegas Tonight on the air, please go to our website, vegassaints.org, and click the Donate button. To send a check or money order, please make it out to Dale Wynn Davidson Ministries and mail it to 9030 West Sahara Avenue, Suite 255, Las Vegas, Nevada, 89117. To suggest a guest to appear on the show or any other suggestions or questions, write to Dale at dalewdavidson@yahoo.com or call him at 702-480-3989.
Shine, Las Vegas, shine.